Good morning and welcome back to our APM question solving discussion. Today, I have planned two questions, both from section B, and the objective is to understand how to read the requirement and how exactly to frame your answer, how to ensure that you don't end up over explaining. Because that is one mistake which everyone makes in APM, SBL, AAA, the three theory papers people end up over explaining. So let's also try to get a hang of how to structure your answers correctly. Okay. These are, as I told you, two questions from section B, not particularly difficult or not particularly heavy duty to tackle. Okay. So let's start. This one is Sgolitaire and this one is Clonyard and Elric. Two separate questions. Let's see how it goes. It is now 1st of September 2005. Respond to the board of Skoltaire's request for work on the following areas. The effect of ethical issues on manufacturing decision, how EMA, that is environmental management accounting, how will it help Skolitaire? Now, if you observe in all the other papers now, the requirement itself is very clear and you know by looking at the requirement ki what do you have to pick up. In most APM questions na आपको पता नहीं चलेगा. If you just look at the requirement here, effect of ethical issues on manufacturing decision, you know nothing of what the situation is. Usually in APM, वो जो आपका requirement है ना, that requirement or the expectation is communicated in the last 3-4 lines. Or towards the end of the exhibit, you will get all the information that you need. ठीक है. Otherwise, in SBL बोलो, not SBL, in SBR बोलो, AFM बोलो, our eyes are automatically trained कि यार यहाँ से requirement उठाएंगे and यहाँ पे we'll try to find it out. Doesn't work that way in APM in most questions. ठीक है. Sgolitaire is a large company listed on the Jayland Stock Exchange. Let's see if we can, underline some critical points. This is listed. Its main objective is to maximize the wealth of shareholders. The largest shareholder is a pension fund, which only invests in companies which behave ethically towards their stakeholders and the environment. All companies listed in Jayland must produce an annual corporate sustainability report. Sgolitaire manufactures a diverse range of chemicals, ranging from those for use in industrial processes to household detergents and cleaning products. Sgolitaire is a well-known and trusted brand in Jayland. Many of its household products command premium prices because they use ingredients and manufacturing processes which cause less harm to the environment than those of competitors. ठीक है. As part of a wider strategy, Sgolitaire plans to produce a new product, Chemical K, which will require the building of a new manufacturing plant. The company has always manufactured in Jayland, but in order to increase business performance, the board is considering whether to build a new plant overseas at a site identified in Kayland. Due to high unemployment in Kayland, labor costs are lower. Environmental regulations are also less strict in Jayland. Kayland is a hot, dry country where there is often insufficient water available to meet the needs of the population and their livestock. ठीक है. Your current country is Jayland and where do you want to go? The foreign country is Kayland. ठीक है. Now, Kayland is a hot, dry country जहाँ पे there is water shortage. Sgolitaire's largest shareholder, the pension fund, is aware that the company lacks experience in operating outside Jayland. Because of this, the shareholder is concerned that the board may pay insufficient attention to the impact of ethical issues on both strategy formulation and business performance when taking the decision whether to manufacture in Kayland. The board have asked your advice on how ethical issues may affect the decision to manufacture in Kayland. See, what is the question? The question is how ethical issues may affect the decision. They have so focuses the impact of these ethical challenges on the decision making process. ठीक है. Then environmental impact of chemical K. The manufacture of chemical K would consume large volume of water taken from a nearby river. To comply with the limited environmental regulations in Kayland, some of this water would be used to dilute a toxic waste product A. which arises from the manufacturing process. The diluted WPA would then be discharged back into the nearby river. The discharge of WPA into rivers is not permitted in Sgolitaire's home country of Jalen because there is some scientific evidence that contact with WPA may cause serious long-term health problems to people, which may not become apparent for many years. Okay. Production of chemical K would cease after 10 years and the plant must be decommissioned. The site would remain contaminated with harmful chemicals for many years after decommissioning, unless a separate cleaning operation is undertaken. Exhibit 4 is about environmental management accounting, how EMA will help Sgolitaire. It has been suggested that Sgolitaire uses environmental management accounting to improve business performance. EMA is the identification, collection, and analysis of information related to the physical and financial impact of an organization's activities on the environment. The board wants your advice on how EMA will help Sgolitaire in the following four areas: calculating cost, investment appraisal, setting performance measures, targets, and product pricing. In relation to investment appraisal, the board calculated that NPV of the proposal to manufacture chemical K in Kayland is 240 million compared to 200 million if done in home country of Jalen. It has since been identified that cost of decommissioning the plant and cleaning the site were not included in these calculations. So the board has now begun the work of estimating present value of cost to decommission and clean the two possible sites, which is given in Appendix 1. Present value of cost of decommissioning. In Jayland it is 20 and 60. In Kayland it is 30. Total लिया है. The board has estimated that because of logistical difficulties due to Kayland being 8,000 kilometers from Jayland, decommissioning costs, which do not include the cost of cleaning the site, would be 50% higher than in Jayland. तो ये 60 है तो it is 50% higher than that site cleanup cost. The board has not yet estimated the cost of cleaning the site in Kayland, though because of the same logistical difficulties which apply to decommissioning cost of cleaning the site in Kayland will also be higher than in Jayland. ठीक है. Now बहुत सारा information है, but the question is what is the impact of ethical issues और हाउ डू एथिकल इश्यूज इम्पैक्ट द डिसीजन मेकिंग, वही पूछा है ना. हाउ एथिकल इश्यूज में अफेक्ट द डिसीजन टू मैन्युफैक्चर इन केलन. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वील हैव टू फॉर्मुलेट द अप्रोच इन आवर माइंड कि व्हाट ऑल पॉइंट्स आर वी गोइंग टू इंक्लूड. ठीक है. नाउ देयर आर सम इश्यूज दैट लीप टू द आई, एकदम अपेरेंट है. कैन यू आइडेंटिफाई सम ऑफ दीज? ऑब्जर्व द फर्स्ट पैरा. ठीक है. एनीथिंग दैट स्ट्राइक्स यू एज relevant from this?
The influence of the shareholder, like the largest shareholder they have is basically only going to invest in the company which is performing ethically or behaving ethically.
Correct. So, the biggest shareholder only invests in ethical companies, so that ideally should influence and will influence your strategy and policy formulation, right? What will happen is if you don't follow, वो pension fund will sell all the shares of the company, and the company's market valuation and everything will fall down. It will lose a competitive advantage and everything. ठीक है. Then, what other issues do you think are apparent? If you look at this, ये तो एक तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल ये केलन कंट्री में यू ऑलरेडी डोंट हैव इनफ वाटर सप्लाई, एंड व्हाट यू आर डूइंग इज यू आर रिलीजिंग दैट WPA नाम का जो वेस्ट है, यू आर रिड्यूसिंग दैट इनटू द ethic, you are releasing that into the river. Now in Kayland, the environmental regulations are already very relaxed, right? Now in face of that situation, you are releasing, because in your country the environmental regulations are stricter. Kayland में environmental regulations are less strict. तो आप क्या कर रहे हो? You are going to release that water, contaminated water, into the river. ठीक है. So that is going to harm the local population. It will have an impact on the plants and animals also. ठीक है. Then there is the site cleanup cost at Kayland once the production ceases. So the company could also think कि यार वो country में the environmental regulations are less strict. There is a possibility that the company will leave the site with contaminated chemicals. वहां से भाग जाएंगे because they feel कि यार after the project is done, that country or that land has no use for us. They might abandon, or they might not do the decommissioning and clean up the way normally it is expected out of them. And what will happen because of that? Because of that, the company's long-term reputation will suffer, and naturally, it will be unethical for from that perspective also. Now, the board also has a duty to develop strategies, which will benefit their internal stakeholders. See, you have to find out ways to, safely dispose of the WPA, which, see, it some studies have shown that in the long run it could be, it could have a negative impact. But what if it doesn't have a negative impact? Then tomorrow your shareholders will come crying and they will say ki, uh, you spent so much money on treating this WPA, so much cost was incurred, so much money was spent, and at the end of it, that chemical was not even harmful. So our shareholder wealth got eroded in the process. Or many employees may want to work for a business, with ethical strategies, and it is quite possible that some employees might feel here because this business is not ethically responsible, we don't want to work with the company. तो वो भी हो सकता है. So all of these points will have to be incorporated. How ethical issues may affect the decision to manufacture in Kaland. ठीक है. So how ethical issues will do what? How ethical issues may affect the decision to manufacture in Kaland. How ethical issues may impact the decision to मैन्युफैक्चर इन केलन. ठीक है. ये फर्स्ट सॉरी ये आपका फर्स्ट पार्ट है. नाउ लेट्स गो वन बाय वन. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, क्विकली एक्सप्लेन व्हाट आर बिजनेस एथिक्स. ठीक है, 2 लाइन में एक्सप्लेन करो एंड हाउ डज इट हेल्प द एंटिटी. व्हाट आर बिजनेस एथिक्स. ठीक है. एंड हाउ डज फॉलोइंग हाई स्टैंडर्ड्स ऑफ एथिकल बिहेवियर, हाउ डज इट हेल्प द कंपनी. ठीक है. हाउ डज incorporating high standards of ethical behavior help the company. ठीक है. You have to write 2 to 3 lines. Basically, long term sustainable advantage for the company. ठीक है. Or there is a possibility that, or rather, stakeholders respond positively to ethical behavior. ठीक है. Now, ये आपने एक बैकग्राउंड दे दिया. ठीक है. नाउ टॉक अबाउट द बिगेस्ट शेयर होल्डर. ठीक है. सो बिगेस्ट शेयर होल्डर ओनली इन्वेस्ट इन एथिकल कंपनीज. बिगेस्ट शेयर होल्डर ओनली इन, आप उसका पूरा यू नो ट्रेस द फुल जर्नी. व्हाई इज दैट शेयर होल्डर्स इंटरेस्ट सो इंपॉर्टेंट. ठीक है. बिगेस्ट शेयर होल्डर ओनली इन्वेस्ट इन एथिकल कंपनीज. फिर आपको बताना पड़ेगा स्टेप बाय स्टेप दैट, सी नाउ यू डोंट हैव टू प्रिपेयर द फुल मेंडेलोज मैट्रिक्स, बट दिस इज अ हाई पावर हाई इंटरेस्ट शेयर होल्डर. सो what he or his opinion is going to strongly influence the company also, and keeping him, he is at the highest level of satisfaction that you have to keep, right? So high interest, high power shareholder. ठीक है. You will make a reference to Mendelow's matrix and state the appropriate response for this type of stakeholder. ठीक है. Explain that in 1 to 2 lines. Then Pension fund, if it is not satisfied, if pension fund is led to believe that the company is not following ethical practices, it is likely to sell the shares. ठीक है, it is likely to sell the shares, and this sell off by the largest investor will trigger market panic and lead to panic selling, thereby destroying shareholder wealth. है ना? If the biggest investor sells, then everybody will start, offloading the shares, and that is not going to work for the company. The company will see, ideally, what should the company do? It should try to create a sustainable advantage. Maybe it is at the maybe there is an immediate cost involved, but at least you will be able to maximize the long term wealth. ठीक है, company should try to do what? Should try to indulge in sustainable in creation of that long term advantage. ठीक है, company should try to create a long term sustainable advantage, है ना? उससे क्या होगा? which is which will ultimately lead to maximization of shareholder wealth, which will ultimately lead to maximization of long term wealth. ठीक है, so just give a closing remark for that. ठीक है, एक you spoke about the biggest shareholder, that was one aspect. Then please mention कि यार Kaeland's environmental regulations are they don't have too many environmental regulations. Kaeland's environmental regulations, ठीक है, not too many regulations as opposed to home country. Company might use this as an opportunity to release WPA without adequate treatment, है ना? वो एक फियर है आपके माइंड में कि because of that, because Kaeland's environmental regulations are relaxed, company would not treat the waste material so much and it will directly release it into the river. ठीक है, it will be unethical because it could harm human health in the long term. ठीक है, is unethical because it could harm human health in the long term. ठीक है, now ये एक पार्ट हो गया. Now mention the fact. See, this is why is this an ethical issue? Because you are trying to find the easy way out. आप खुद के कंट्री में करेंगे तो you will have to incur extra cost for treating the material. If you are doing it in foreign country, you are saving on that much cost. ठीक है, then scarcity of water. Kaeland, water scarcity. What do we talk with respect to that? It is already a scarce resource. Water is already a scarce resource. Releasing untreated waste into the river could harm what? Could harm the local population and livestock. ठीक है, and will create further strain on the already limited वाटर सप्लाई. ठीक है. नाउ ये भी एक प्रॉब्लम है. नाउ लुक एट द कॉस्ट ऑफ decommissioning. ठीक है. इन जेलंड इट इज 80, इन केलंड इट इज 30. Now the board has not yet estimated the cost of site cleanup in Kayland, है ना. वो that value is blank by the way. This could be a deliberate strategy because the board could think यार ये उधर तो environmental regulations are not so strict, so you know we might not as well follow that. Or leaving the site contaminated with harmful chemicals after decommissioning the plant could affect the company's reputation, and in the long term it will be termed as unethical. ठीक है. Decommissioning. State that environmental regulations in Kayland are less severe. Point out how company has not included that estimate in the original projection. So maybe कंपनी के दिमाग में होगा कि करेंगे ही नहीं, right? So there is a possibility that the company will not treat the land or perform decommissioning as per requirements and leave the land or leave the premises polluted and leave the premises polluted will impact long term reputation and credibility. So, it's like Indian travelers. I have, when they travel abroad, they literally leave the room in a mess, and that often, creates a very negative image of Indians in the minds of these, foreign countries, because, most of them leave the room in a state of mess, something like this. ठीक है. ये भी हो जाएगा अनएथिकल, राइट. बट आपको क्या पूछा है? आपको सिर्फ ये नहीं पूछा है इफेक्ट ऑफ एथिकल इश्यूज ऑन द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग डिसीजन. ठीक है. एक और पॉइंट, एक काउंटर व्यू दैट यू कैन पुट. बोर्ड का ऑब्जेक्टिव शुड बी मैक्सिमाइजेशन ऑफ शेयर होल्डर वेल्थ, राइट. सो फ्रॉम एन इंटरनल स्टेक होल्डर्स पर्सपेक्टिव, WPA, what is the word that they have chosen here? For WPA is not released, there is some scientific evidence that contact may cause serious long-term health problems. WPA, some scientific evidence of potential health issues. अभी आपको क्या बोलना है यहाँ पे? So, cost incurred for treatment. Okay. What if later it is found out that WPA is harmless? Shareholders will uh, shareholders will be impacted, as according to them a huge amount must have been spent on treatment which was not required, and that led to erosion of their wealth. ये भी हो सकता है. कि shareholders will say यार तुमने check क्यों नहीं किया, you wasted so much money on cleanup and treatment and all of that, only to realize that spending so much money was unnecessary, so we are suffering because of that. So you point out that particular issue to the shareholder, you point out that counter view also, and talk about employees might want to work for ethical employers, and non-adherence to ethical principles might drive away talent from the company. If you know कि यार ये company का पूरा situation is completely messed up, and they are not following ethical principles, you a as an employee, as an individual, want to be associated with ethical companies, naturally you will be like यार इसके साथ I don't want to work because my name gets damaged or tarnished in the process. Let me at least work with a company which might pay a little less, but my reputation, my credibility should not get hampered. And that is something which all of us think and should think. Today when I work with tech companies, my concern is here, I don't want to work with someone whose name is already spoiled in the market, because if they are doing unethical practices like mis-selling to the students, naturally I will get affected in the process, because my name will also be dragged through the mud because of that. So this helps you to, this could be a thought process for certain employees, मतलब ये possibility है. ठीक है? Are you with me, all of you?
Yes, sir.
ठीक है, एक बार पढ़ेंगे पूरा, एक बार read it carefully. Now in this question I have deliberately not done one thing which I'll do in the next question. Question 2 में करूंगा मैं एक चीज. Tell me when you want me to scroll, huh?
No, please scroll down.
ठीक है। ठीक है, चलो। Now, second part of the question, how EMA will help Sgolitaire. What is EMA? EMA is Environmental Management Accounting. ठीक है। अब one part of the question, of course, was talking about the ethical impact. Now, you have to think and tell me if there is anything else that is left from an ethical standpoint. Can we add anything else which is not directly given to you, but it can make an important part of your answer? Do you think customers will have a point of view when it comes to companies being ethical or not? I think we can talk about that. है ना? Customers. Customers are likely to support companies that follow ethical practices. Customers likely to support companies and buy products from companies which follow ethical practices.
Sir, can we also put this point for the like lenders or a bank that if bank sees
Yeah,
you as a risky entity, then they won't be funding you if we needed any funding for the future.
could be quite possible. We can mention that if unethical practices are used, customers may boycott. Or देखो, do you see anything else in exhibit 2 and 3? See, don't go don't make a very wild assumption. Your answer, your point should be with respect to the data that is given to you. ठीक है? Anything with respect to employees?
So, as the waste product is a toxic, so it can affect the workers too.
Okay, okay, fair enough. What else? Now think about any other stakeholder that you are
Sir,
facing.
sorry to interrupt, but what about the exploitation of the employers in K-land? Like there are high unemployment, then there are chances that company may like exploit
Labor
the rights of
costs are
the
lower.
employer.
Due to high unethical employment in Kayland, labor costs are lower. So there is a possibility that the company will offer even lower wages in order to, improve the overall performance of the business. And if it is found out, for example, that you are not paying the minimum wage, then again it will damage the company's reputation. We can mention that. Employees.
But they might exploit the employees because they know there will be many available employees which will be able to replace the existing ones.
Correct. High unemployment, company might pay lower wages to get the work done. Then exploitation of employees likely. ठीक है, एंड बोथ प्रैक्टिसेस आर अनएथिकल, बोथ could damage reputation. ठीक है, then is there a stakeholder that we are missing out on? Tell me.
The government of Keyland, like what if they don't give them permission to just start working there? Is it like possible or quite a vague assumption?
थोड़ा फार फेचेड है वो, थोड़ा सा
Okay,
फार फेचेड है। ठीक है,
okay.
विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू दिस सिचुएशन, is there, see, you are already causing a lot of damage. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you cause damage to the environment? The environment support groups and all of those people, they might join forces, and that could harm the reputation of the company, and there could be fines and penalties for poor environmental performance if the matter reaches that level. ठीक है, now,
Like local authority also.
yes, environmental support groups talk about damage to the environment. Support groups might join forces with other interested stakeholders and might force the company to suspend its operations. See, we are not going. Why is this not a far-fetched assumption? Because very clearly it is written that there is so much damage that has been caused to the environment, and there are other stakeholders in the system who are not necessarily in favor of this kind of damage, है ना? So, support groups might join forces with other interested stakeholders, might force the company to suspend its operations, fines and penalties likely, है ना? And suspend its operations. See, if you say they might force you to shut down the operations, वो थोड़ा far fetched हो जाता है. But suspension of operations is quite likely. I think वो जो fracking वाला question था उसमें we saw this, right? उसमें लिखा था ये कि the environmental pressure groups are asking you to or suspend your operations, or for some days the operations were not, so the company was not operating because of the pressure created by these setups. ठीक है, I think this could be all. We have covered all the points. See, this point was important. Labor costs are lower. अब यहाँ पे हमने mistake क्या किया? Deliberately, which I will cover up in section 2, we didn't make any rough notes. We didn't underline too much. See, too much underlining sometimes is a problem because then you end up underlining the whole thing. But to wherever you feel ना कि यार ये ethical issue से related है, labor cost lower है, and if your mind thinks of something, make a rough note, because अच्छा point you will miss out on if you don't pay attention to what you are writing, and that is one thing we want to avoid. ठीक है, so next question से question 2 से what we are going to do is we are going to make sure that we make our rough notes so that our answer becomes a little more comprehensive. ठीक है, अब ये देखो, ईएमए, ठीक है, क्वेश्चन का रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है? हाउ ईएमए विल हेल्प स्कॉलिटेयर, एनवायरमेंटल मैनेजमेंट अकाउंटिंग, हाउ डू यू थिंक इट इज गोइंग टू हेल्प द कंपनी? बताइए. There are four areas that they have already identified for you: calculating cost, investment appraisal, setting performance measures and targets, product pricing. Tell me. First thing is calculating cost. Now observe one more thing which we had underlined. Company is listed in this country, right? And the company must produce an annual CSR report. वो भी लिख के दिया है आपको. Company must produce an annual CSR report, है ना? So if the company has to produce an annual CSR report, उसमें you will have to include all the environment related cost. Now जो traditional accounting techniques है, they might not be helpful in calculating the environment related cost. EMA will help you to do that. Then mention about the different techniques in EMA. How will they help? है ना? So write about that. ठीक है. So part B. how EMA helps. Calculation of cost. Company is listed, needs to produce CSR report and detailed cost calculation and disclosure will be a necessity. In your CSR report, यही सब आपको लिखना पड़ेगा, right? Now mention how traditional management accounting techniques, traditional management accounting techniques will not be able to calculate environment related costs. This is where EMA will come in helpful. EMA will be helpful here. ठीक है. Now write down what all EMA will help you to calculate. ठीक है. EMA will help to calculate what all? It will help you to calculate hidden costs. ठीक है. It will help you to calculate cost of contingency. Cost of or costs likely to be incurred under extreme circumstances. ठीक है. What else? What else will it help you with? बताइए. EMA will see, EMA makes use of techniques like environmental activity based costing, input output analysis, life cycle costing, all of that. It will help you to understand the cost drivers with respect to environment related cost. ठीक है. Uh, it will also help you to make your budgets more realistic. It will help you in cost control. है ना? EMA uses techniques like environmental activity based costing, input output analysis and लाइफ साइकिल कॉस्टिंग. ठीक है. क्या होगा? Will help to analyze cost drivers which will help in cost control. ठीक है. Then see, when you do input output analysis, which is very much a part of environmental management accounting, ठीक है, will help to improve utilization of resources and help reduce wastage. Correct? So this is how environmental management accounting will help you in cost calculation. Any other point that comes to your mind? Urvaksh? This is in a way enough only. कुछ और होगा तो do let me know. वत्सल, कुछ ऐड करना है यहाँ पे?
Not sure about this, sir. Like, no, no.
कुछ आया दिमाग में तो कर लेंगे. Look at the next one. Investment appraisal. How does environmental management accounting help in investment appraisal? Don't you think it will help you to ensure that all the environment related costs are included in investment appraisal? Right? आपका NPV calculation did not include right now, for example, the present value of decommissioning. If you are using environmental management accounting, it will include all the relevant cost, right?
Yes.
ठीक है. Investment appraisal. EMA helps to ensure that all environment related cost estimates are included in the NPV calculations, है ना? All environment related estimates, cost estimates are included in NPV calculation.
So sorry to interrupt. Can compliance related costs be included in EMA, like the cost to comply to the local or the overall environmental factors and ethics?
Yeah, we can. We can.
Mhm.
Now, this point na investment appraisal related, ये देखो. In relation to investment appraisal, the board calculated the NPV of the proposal to manufacture chemical K in Kayland is 240 compared to 200 if manufacturing was done in Jayland. It has since been identified that the cost of decommissioning the plant and cleaning the site were not included in these calculations. So the board has now begun the work of estimating the present value of the cost to decommission and clean the two possible sites. So there is something specific that they have given about investment appraisal. The board has estimated that because of logistical difficulties being this, which do not include the cost of cleaning the site, would be 50% higher than in Jayland. The board has not yet estimated the cost of cleaning the site in Kayland, though because of the same logistical difficulties which apply to decommissioning cost of cleaning the site will also be higher than in Jayland. ठीक है? So see, if you don't take into account the decommissioning cost and all of that, your NPVs are 240 and 200. Now, they have given you some additional information. ठीक है? What is that additional information? कि the board has estimated that in Kayland, the cost is going to be 50% higher than in Jayland. तो ये 90 हो जाएगा. 30 plus 90, this will become 120. Right? So, Kayland में कितना है? In Kayland, the current NPV is 240. When you include that environmental related decommissioning cost and all of that, तो आपका present value of decommissioning cost will become 120, 30 plus 90, right? And then your NPV will become half of that. Also, when you incorporate this 80, 200 minus 80 आप करेंगे तो again it will go down to 120. ठीक है? So, EMA was not employed earlier and the company missed out on incorporating environment related and other decommissioning costs into the NPV working. For Kayland, the PV of these unaccounted costs is 120 million, and after incorporating this amount, the NPV falls down to 120 as opposed to current NPV of 240 million. ठीक है? एंड जेलैंड में भी सेम होगा. ठीक है? इन जेलैंड The PV of these unaccounted costs is 20 million. ठीक है? And after incorporating this amount, it falls down to 120 as opposed to current NPV of 200 million. ठीक है? So both are falling down. See, the board should probably, now that they are comparable, it might change the decision also. How will it change the decision? Tell me.
If you are going to say incur the same cost or going like getting if you are going to get same returns, then why are we facing so much of risk? And
Correct. So earlier, due to NPV of Kalen being higher than Jalen, the company could have preferred Kalen. ठीक है? But now that the revised NPV is the same, the company is getting the same NPV in Jalen for a significantly lower risk. This will change the decision of the company to invest. है ना? So earlier the reason you were preferring Kalen was uska NPV was higher, Jalen ka NPV was lower. But now that you have a different perspective, after incorporating these environment related costs, now you feel yeah, it's better to do it in Jalen. At least the risk is lower, NPV you are getting is anyway the same. ठीक है? Make sense? ठीक है? चलो. Next one, setting performance measures and targets. How does it help here? How does EMA help you in setting performance targets? See, first of all, understand that the company has to compulsorily publish a CSR report. So its environmental performance is clear to a range of stakeholders, many of whom have an interest in the environmental matters, right? Now, because one of the biggest shareholders is your pension fund and it is very interested in the company staying ethical, right? Now, performance targets could be set better with the help of environmental management accounting. For example, one of your key performance indicators or targets, if you want to talk about that, could be volume of water taken from the local river, uh, proportion of WPA getting released, वो हो सकता है, right? So you could have some short-term and long-term performance targets, and EMA will help you with that. Do you agree?
yes, sir.
ठीक है? चलो, let's write that down. Setting performance measures and targets. What can you say about that? Explain why these targets are important. Listed company which has to compulsorily issue a CSR report, and these targets could help to highlight achievements to stakeholders. ठीक है? Then talk about what kind of targets you could set and how EMA could help you. Talk about what kind of targets you could set, financial and non-financial, and how EMA will help. ठीक है. What could these targets be? Water taken from rivers, pollutants released into the river. So you just mention that, and how it number of cases of ill health due to getting in contact with WPA. Cases of ill health after getting in contact with WPA. ठीक है, it could help you to set these targets, and EMA will give you the right parameters. It will help you to calculate the numbers accordingly. That was about setting performance measures. Last one is product pricing. How does EMA help you in product pricing? Vatsal, what do you think?
Like we could take into account the cost which are we would have forgot or missed in the other costing method.
Instead, you're right, but instead of saying forgot, I would say the other traditional accounting methods, they don't understand all of these costs. So you will end up not recording the cost because you don't understand the nature of the cost. With environmental management accounting, all the hidden cost, contingency cost, decommissioning, everything can be considered, and it will help you to, first of all, do the right costing, and therefore it will also help you in setting the selling price. Do you agree?
Yes, yes, and we can also determine if you're making profit or not, at the end of the project or a year.
Correct. Product pricing. Explain how traditional methods do not have full knowledge of identification of product costs, identification of environment related costs, which are being incurred due to product manufacturing. How is EMA helping to calculate and estimate these costs? With better cost estimation, product pricing can be fine-tuned. Of course, naturally, you have to describe this in a little more detail, but this is how EMA is going to help you. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Hence,
The content will be this. We just have to add few good
you have
wordings
to
and make.
not good wordings भी नहीं, आपको बस इसको expand करना है थोड़ा सा.
Yes, yes,
This is the structure. ठीक है. अब जैसे I have left out certain words. Non-adherence to ethical principles might drive talent away from the company. ये point है. इसको बस थोड़ा सा आपको expand करना है. But all
yes.
the keywords for the answer have been included here. ठीक है? चलो, anything you guys want to ask?
So do we have to write conclusion in all the questions?
No, you should write it only when it is asked. Don't do only do something that has been specifically requested. जो बोला नहीं है वो करो भी मत. ठीक है?
Out.
Okay. There's another question that I want to do. But for that, I want you to read the question first. I will send the question on the group. I'll give you 5 minutes to read, then we can do it together.